Also heading to Hawaii is the U.S. Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel. His visit helps to mark this, the first time that the Association of Southeast Asian Nations has held its defense ministers meeting on U.S. soil. CCTV's Nathan King is in Honolulu.
That's right, more than say welcome to Hawaii, or aloha as they say here. Remember, the US is long accused of not turning up for Asian summits and forums, but this one they're hosting on US soil for the first time, trying to convince ASEAN members that the pivot to Asia is real despite commitments elsewhere and budget cuts. But Hawaii is symbolic of what the US is trying to do. Hawaii is a fitting place for the members of ASEAN to meet. In the middle of the Pacific, the closest US state to Asia and the home of US Pacific Command. Before heading to Hawaii, we talked to Hawaii Congresswoman Colleen Hanabusa about Hawaii's place in the US pivot to Asia.
So it makes it very clear that Hawaii has literally a central role, and with this pivot, as we call it, to Asia Pacific, it just seems to me that if everything lines up properly, Hawaii's influence will be felt, and Hawaii can play that major role of, I think, of facilitating meetings as well as being a place where people can feel comfortable, no matter who you are, where you are.
ASEAN defence ministers will arrive here as tensions are running high in the South China Sea, and also at a time when US defence budgets are being cut and China is rising. This is providing added impetus for the US to work with regional groupings like ASEAN.
We're so accustomed to being the center, and we want to deal with Japan, or we want to deal with South Korea, we want to deal with China, we want to deal, we want to deal with everyone, and we perceive ourselves as the middle. But in order for us to all succeed in Asia Pacific, we're going to have to figure out a way to make it multinational.
There's some ASEAN members who will be slightly suspicious of US motives, especially when it comes to a code of conduct for the South China Sea, as some people think still that the US pivot to Asia, of course, is about containing China's rise. And some ASEAN members don't want to be in the position of choosing between Beijing on the one hand and Washington on the other. But the US message this week is, unlike what's going on in Europe with the face-off with Russia over the Ukraine, that their policy when it comes to Asia is more about soft power, trade, integrating security architecture, creating mechanisms to avoid misunderstandings, and basically the US working with others where it used to take the lead.